Well, when I was put on the program last week, I am not Zena. So if any one of you read the first flyer, that was Zena. So I am just filling in for Zena because she couldn't make it. But when I started thinking about this, I felt like I lived in this country for 40 years. I'm still meeting people who really do not know what is Palestine, where is Palestine, and what's happening to Palestine. This is sad, knowing that our country, the United States of America, is the enabler, the supporter, the financier of everything that Israel is doing. Without it, Israel cannot do this. So I thought I'll just put a few slides to go over some of the history of the Palestinians. So if you look at this map, in 1946, actually, you will not find a map that called that area Israel. It's always called Palestine. So look at your atlas from the 40s, National Geographic, it was Palestine. But Palestine at that time is really primarily Palestinians made of Palestinian Jews, Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Muslims. How did that change? Really similar to what happened to Native Americans and African Americans, the Europeans. So this massive immigration of the Europeans to Palestine. So if you look at Palestine, the Nakba, which is we call it catastrophe, is started to emerge in Europe. And this was facilitated by the unlimited and conditional support of the Europeans. Actually, in 1916, after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, the Europeans, led by the French and the British, decided to divide the Arab world. And Palestine ended at becoming a colony of Great Britain. So that was the first step. And then in 1917, which next year will be the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, the Balfour, who was the foreign minister of Britain, promised the land of Palestine to become the home of the Jewish people. So the British promised Palestine to people who were not there, and the British promised the land they don't own, which is just shocking. But this is a history that I wanted a lot of people to look into and read. Look at the numbers. In 1851, there was about over 300,000 Palestinian Muslims and Christians and about 13,000 Palestinian Jews. So at that time, it was a mixed society. The Jews were a minority, and by 1925, the number of Jews in Palestine grew up to about 100,000. The Palestinians grew up to 765. The rise of the Nazi movement and the persecution of Jews in Europe really contributed to the massive immigration of Jews, facilitated by the British and the French and the Europeans to Palestine. So by 1946-47, there was about 400,000 Jews and over 1 million Palestinian Christians and Muslims. In November of 1947, the newly created United Nations, who created the United Nations? The Europeans, because they were the major powers, Britain and the French. They created the UN, and the United Nations decided, well, we're gonna partition Palestine. At that time, remember, Palestine was a mandate or a colony of Britain. And now, remember 1917, the Balfour Declaration? So they started putting this into action now. In addition to facilitating massive immigration of Jews to Palestine and arming a lot of the militias, the terrorist groups that were functioning and acting in Palestine, they decided, well, after all these skirmishes, the massive immigration, the land theft from Palestinians of the new arrivals, they decided to partition Palestine. But I wanted to just tell you a story. I was very close to my grandfather, and he always told me that he had the best relationships with Jewish neighbors and others. We are farmers. We produce olives and eggs and sheep and you name it, we are farmers. His best partners were Jewish Palestinians. So they bought from us and so we had great relationships between the Palestinians and the Jewish. Even when the Jews arrived to Palestine in the 40s, at the beginning the Palestinians were not alarmed till they started taking over land and committing terrorist acts. So when the United Nations decided to divide Palestine, they allocated, and I'm going to show the map now because I think, so if you look at the 1947 plan, they decided to give 55% of Palestine to the Jewish population and 42% to the Palestinians. Notice that the Palestinians primarily were left to what is primarily called the West Bank and Gaza. So the coastal region, the fertile land, ended up being given to the Jewish state. Also, you wanted to keep in mind that 55% of the land giving at that time, Jews owned 7% of the land, but the United Nations allocated 55% of the land of Palestine to them. And the 42% also went to the Palestinians. And then, if you do not know, the Jerusalem area was assigned to become an international territory. Well, the Palestinians did not accept this. The Palestinians did not accept this, and they decided, well, we're going to fight it. By the end of the war, Israel occupied 78% of Palestine, and the only thing left is what now is called the West Bank and Gaza. So that was a complete occupation. Here is the map. So that's what happened in 1948. Fast forward, the 1967, Palestine was, the rest of Palestine, which is the West Bank and Gaza, were occupied, and now the whole country of Palestine is under Israel. With the exception of, you look at the West Bank, those green spots left in the West Bank. Now, I'm just going to quickly go over, this is my grandfather's home, where he was born and lived. Nobody lives there. This is my family home. Downstairs was my father, where I was living, and upstairs, as the Palestinian natural things, they have their children live in the same building. This is our za'atar and olive farms. If you ate za'atar, this is za'atar, you probably got some of this, and the olive trees. So we are, as I told you, we are farmers. And there is a lot of connections between what is happening in Palestine and what is happening in the United States and for African American, Native Americans. The walls, the separation, the destruction of resources and the theft of resources, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of time to talk about, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. This is where my family is living. So I was born in a town named Kufr Zibad in there. Look at that dotted line was the 67 borders, and this is the separation apartheid wall, the red line. I wanted you to look at the town of Kalkili. I wish we have a pointer here. But if you look at Kalkili here, look at that Kalkili. It's a town of about 65, 70,000 people. They have access, the whole access to the town is a large metal gate that can be closed or opened in 1 minute. The whole population. Also keep in mind what happened behind those walls. Most of the water resources and wells for all of these towns is behind the red line. Now the Israelis are in charge of that, and they are selling it to the Palestinian people. They are selling the people their own water. And as I told you, I am from that little town, Kufr Zibad. My family lost a nice farm behind the red line. So my family lost their land to the Israeli expansion. So Israel created in the West Bank the most sophisticated system of walls, bridges, tunnels, fences, you name it, to create a completely separate living for the Palestinians, where they can go between their own towns and themselves, and then the settlers living, and behind that red wall, all of these there are settlements. These settlements were built on land stolen from the Palestinians, used the same water resources that the Palestinians use, and so on. So this sophisticated system of dominating the people, from controlling their resources, taking their land, is unprecedented. I mean, it's just unbelievable. The Palestinians are hanging tough. I mean, this is actually a real picture. It's not, this is the Israelis now taking the land, destroying olive trees, and the locals are just holding tight to their olive trees. They are holding to their keys to their homes. So the Palestinians are hanging tight. They are having intifadas, as African Americans having their intifadas, as our Native Americans having intifadas, because this is all the oppression of the Europeans, and they are revolting against it. I just wanted to play this.
When I see them, I see us.
Every 28 hours, a black life is stolen by police or vigilantes in the U.S.
Every 2 hours, a Palestinian child was killed in Israel's attack on Gaza last summer.
Eric Garner, 43 years old, father of 6, grandfather, friend.
Ghalia El-Ghannam, 7 years old, killed when an Israeli missile struck her home.
Hashem Abu Maria, 45 years old, father of 4, human rights worker.
Ayana Jones, 7 years old, killed in her sleep by Detroit police.
When I see them, I see us.
Harassed, beaten, tortured, dehumanized.
Stopped and frisked, searched at checkpoints.
Administrative detention, youth incarceration. When I see them,
I see us.
From Rikers Island to Ophir Prison.
From Rafah to Chicago.
Lives are being stolen.
Remember them.
We are not statistics. We are not collateral damage. We have names and faces.
Sakia,
Nadim,
Kimani,
Jawahir,
Renisha.
Muhammad.
They burned me alive in Jerusalem.
They gunned me down in Chicago.
They shot our water tanks in Hebron.
They cut off our water in Detroit.
They demolished our homes in the Nakab.
They swallowed our homes in New Orleans.
When I see them, I see us.
They see our wombs as dangerous, label us demographic threats. They sterilize us without our knowledge.
Mark our children as criminal.
We say no to all forms of oppression in U.S. cities or on Palestine's streets.
We respect the uniqueness of our struggles and our varied histories.
When I see them, I see us. Resilient, steadfast, determined, I see who we were meant to be.
Alive, free, liberated.
Mapping out our destiny.
I see hope.
Strength.
Love.
A place where our children can dream.
I see a road.
A partner.
A family.
A world where we can rise
and be seen.
So definitely social media played major role in connecting people in Gaza and the West Bank, on Facebook telling people in Ferguson and other places how to resist tear gas by holding an onion with you and sending instructions. It's really inspiring to see the communications between the two communities. I'm going to stop here, and I hope this discussion will continue as we go. Thank you.